Good evening, everyone. I am Angel from Lima. Welcome to my channel. 3 days ago, Mexico celebrated its independence, and this is a country that I have always loved. Ever since I was a child, I read everything I could about the pre-Hispanic civilizations, the Aztecs, the Mayans, the viceroyalty of New Spain. About literature or poetry in particular, there was very little that I knew. My only references were Nobel awarded Octavio Paz and Amado Nervo. However, about this woman, Guadalupe Amor, better known as Pita Amor, I knew nothing until 2005 or 6 approximately. There was a Mexican channel called Telehit, and there was a set of sketches, comical sketches. One of them was called Desde Gallola. There I saw an actor who impersonated her very well. It was a parody, of course, almost a caricature of an eccentric lady, always angry, furious. She was also arrogant, so egoistic and egocentric, especially. Okay, so well, a character like that does not make us feel attracted immediately, but I started to want to know more. Many years later, Mexico was the guest of honor of the International Book Fair here in my city, in Lima. When I went to the stand, to the stall to see the books and to try to find a book containing her poetry, there was absolutely nothing about Pita Amor. The young man who was there knew nothing about her either. So I wonder why, if that book is a kind of anthology of Mexican poetry, why doesn't she appear? Well, I had to wait until October that year, in which I went to the Palacio de Bellas Artes, the Palace of Fine Art, in the very center of Mexico City, where I found a bookshop and I got this book, Indispensable Poetry, Guadalupe Amor. This book starts with an article by her niece, famous Mexican writer Elena Poniatowska Amor. She remembers her own childhood and the relationship with her aunt, Guadalupe. The many relationships and interaction that she had with the intelligentsia of Mexico in the throughout the 20th century, and Pita Amor also writes, and she writes in prose. That text comes from 1951, and she specifies, she clarifies that it was the very first time that she writes in prose. Well, this is a kind of autobiography, not so serious, of course, but it sounds very personal. She says how she spent her childhood, the fortune that she and her family had was good taste, because after the Mexican Revolution, her family had become one of the new poor class. Well, she lived intensely and she adjusted to the classic forms of poetry, Spanish poetry. Then I've found many poems by her that deal with concepts such as doubting about the very existence of God, sadness and distress, a loss of hope. What will happen when she dies? Does life after death exist, or they just go to earth and we become dust? That kind of obsession with those topics is reflected. In my case, I am not really into poetry. To be honest, I understand very little after I read a poem. However, in these cases, I read aloud, and just or only after reading aloud, I got to understand what she really intended to express. That fascinating and intense feeling, intense inner self that went beyond the character that she created of herself. A pedantic, arrogant woman who had some kind of superiority complex on the one hand. However, she was also a very intelligent, elegant lady who had no limits, and she didn't lack anything about the Spanish language, and she could do everything she wanted. She could use the language as she pleased. So if you have the opportunity to go to Mexico City, and try to find a book like this, do it. She is definitely my favorite Mexican poet, and I would read her poems one after the other. Bye bye.